you ever go over that. So, in our series of verses today, let's just go step back a little bit and look at the overall message so far in this chapter and from the previous chapter, because it's going in sequence here. There's a sequence going on. If you remember back a chapter, when there was this conversation between Nanda and Vyasa, when Vyasadeva was feeling despondent, and then Nanda appears on the scene, and he tells him, you haven't glorified the Lord enough. It's directly, you've glorified the Lord, but you haven't emphasized that glorification as the primary function of the living entity. You just kind of put it as a side function. If you do this and this and this and live peacefully in the material world, you'll be happy here. And if you worship the Lord, that's really good. Narada's saying, that's not good enough. You have to directly glorify the Lord. So then Narada told his backstory, interesting little backstory, how he got to be Narada Muni, which is enlightening and interesting. So now that section, that conversation's over, and the question, who was it that asked the question? Oh, Sonaka Rishi, who's the representative of all the sages at Naimisharanya. He's asking, now what happened? Now what did they do? Okay, Narada left, then what did Vyasadeva do? So this starts this chapter. So what do you remember about this chapter up to this point? Okay. What did Vyasadeva do? Mr. Nitai?
Too, but he touched water for purification, and then he sat down to meditate.
Yeah, exactly. And where was he meditating? You remember that minor detail? Under a berry tree.
Oh.
Badrik Ashram, up in that area. We had a berry. Yeah, in a little house. We had a little house there. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was ashram surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Okay. So then what does he do? He fixes his mind and in his meditation. Then what does he see? That was described in like one verse. Do you remember? About Vyasadev's meditation. Can you say it a little louder? Because I'm this close. He saw Krsna, and he saw what else? He saw this. He saw the Supreme Lord, and he also saw the illusory energy separate from behind him. Let me see if I can. Excuse me. Yes. Yeah. Thus, he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking in devotional service without any tinge of materialism, and he saw the absolute personality of Godhead along with this external energy, which was under his full control. So that's important too. That's an important theme, that the external energy of the Lord, his external potency, because there's three major potencies. There's the internal potency, the external potency, and the living entity. So they all have functions, and the pieces fit together properly. And when you see those pieces together properly, one in relation to the other, then one can maneuver and navigate through this material existence and fix their mind on the supreme goal. That's the point. But he says in text 5, he said, due to the external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to all these material sufferings in the material world, because he's identifying with it, he undergoes the trials and tribulations and the sufferings, because he's identifying with this temporary existence. He's like absorbed in it. But he's actually, all of the sufferings that the living entity is going through, which means you and I also, they're superfluous to us, our real self, which is quite a revelation. Okay, so anyway, last verse, okay, 6, text number 6 was, the miseries of the living entity are superfluous to him, but they can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. So that's another very important concept to digest. because we're always feeling pushed by the modes of material nature, happiness, distress, anxiety, this, so many problems, this pressure there. But those things, if we link ourselves with devotional service, which means hearing and chanting and serving however we can, then those miseries, the sharp edge of the miseries melt away. They don't disappear completely until you're in an extremely advanced stage, but still the edge, that cutting edge, that suffering edge of the knife of material miseries, it becomes less, we become less affected by it. So that's where we're continuing on in that theme. So our 4 verses for today are verses that a person could talk about each verse for months. In fact, on the 10th verse, the Atmarama verse, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj did speak on that verse for 3 months straight. But we're going to do them all in, we're going to half an hour, no problem. So tune in, okay?
It's 38.
38, sorry. But I've already used up a bunch. Huh? I forgot. Okay. All right, so we're on 7. Go to 7 and we'll chant the Sanskrit to text 7. And now that I spoke already for so many minutes, now I'll say Om Agina Timinandasya Nandana Salakaya Chatsu Umiditam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was certainly born in the darkness of ignorance, so my spiritual master very kindly forced to open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, I'm indebted to Srila Prabhupada. And I beg for some service, any service, menial service, life after life, and the benediction to always remember his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, 7. Sorry, okay. Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam. Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam. Krishna Paramapurushe. Krishna Paramapurushe. Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam. Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam. Shokamoha Bhayapaha. Shokamoha Bhayapaha. Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam. Krishna Paramapurushe. Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam. Shokamoha Bhayapaha. Please chant.
Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam.
Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam.
Krishna Paramapurushe.
Krishna Paramapurushe.
Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam.
Shokamoha Bhayapaha. Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam. Krishna Paramapurushe. Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam. Shokamoha Bhayapaha. Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam. Krishna Paramapurushe. Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam. Shokamoha Bhayapaha. Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam. Krishna Paramapurushe. Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam. Shokamoha Bhayapaha. One more, please.
Yasyam Vaishruyamanayam.
Yasyam
Vaishruyamanayam. Krishna
Krishna Parama Purushe Bhaktir Upadhyate Pumsam Shoka Moha Bhayabaha Yasyam. Actually, let's read it together, okay? This Vedic literature by Pranayam, simply by giving oral reception, Krishna unto Lord Krishna, Parama, Supreme, Purusha, unto the personality of Godhead, Bhaktir, feelings of devotional service, Shoka, lamentation, Moha, illusion, Bhaya, fearfulness, Apa, that which is excluded. Can you go back up to the Sanskrit for a minute? Okay, so what are some of the words that you remember? The translation of Krishna Parama Purusha, what does that mean? Oh, good. Okay, yeah. Any others? Upadhyate? Sprout out. That's a nice one, isn't it? Someone else said something? Bhaktir? Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki, Bhaktir, the process of devotional service. Yes. Any? Yes. By oral reception. Thanks. We just have to hear, don't we? How about Shoka, Moha, Bhaya? Anybody remember those? We're all going through them. Did you say Shoka? Any one of those words you remember the translation to? Okay. Fear, illusion, and Bhaya. Bhaya is fear. Moha and Shoka. Shoka, lamentation. Okay, so here's the solution to Shoka, Moha, and Bhaya. Translation. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to the Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once, extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. Let's do it one more time in a thoughtful way. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So without going any further, how does that make you feel? Even without hearing the explanation in the purport. Inspired, hopeful.
My question, what's wrong with me?
That's thoughtful. Someone else said something that I would encouraged. Yeah, it's very encouraging, isn't it? It's something you can make a mental note out of it, or even a physical note. If people do those things these days, they don't do it with their handwriting, that's for sure. But anyway, make a note of it so that you can keep it in your pocket, so that when the Shoka, Moha, and Bhaya, when lamentation, illusion, fearfulness start to raise their ugly heads, which they probably never even put down practically, but then we can say, this is what's my solution then? Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
We often get stuck in the idea that we have to fix it ourselves, and so we get tangled up in the thoughts that are causing the lamentation and fearfulness, etc., and illusion. But it's as simple as kind of letting go of our control, which we don't really have anyway, of the material energy. It's under the Lord's control, and to just give oral reception. And Hrishikesh brings the senses under control.
Yes, thank you. That's a really good point, that we're trying to fix the problem, can't figure out how to fix it, and that's causing more lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness, that we can't fix it. But actually, all we have to do is listen to the pastimes of the Lord, listen to the activities of the Lord, listen to the explanation of this philosophy of bhakti, and we'll feel some relief. Yes, dear.
Just to kind of add on to Rasika Prabhu, it's something I heard before I came to Krishna consciousness, when I was trying to kind of sort out the mind with other methods, that the only reason we think and think and think and play out conversations in our head and try to solve problems in our head is to just hold on to control. So it's exactly what he said, by giving up that control and surrendering. But I feel like knowing that that's what our mind is doing, is trying to control the situation, which is actually impossible. It's just like our attempt at doing so. Then it's easier to relax the mind and just start to think of, oh, Krishna is going to help with this and provide it.
Yes,
Let me
yes.
just pray.
Good point. Okay, so let's go into the purport. Bruce Prabhu, would you like to start reading the purport? Thanks.
There are various senses of which the ear is most effective. This sense works even when a man is deep asleep. One can protect himself from the hands of an enemy while awake. But while asleep, one is protected by the ear only. The importance of hearing is mentioned here in connection with attaining the highest perfection of life, namely getting free from the material pangs. Everyone is full of lamentation at every moment. He is after the mirage of illusory things, and he is always afraid of his supposed enemy. These are the primary symptoms of the material disease. And it is definitely suggested herein that simply by hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, one gets attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And as soon as this is effected, the symptoms of the material disease disappear. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead, and in this statement, the all-perfect personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is clearly confirmed.
Thanks. Can someone give me some summaries or some takeaways they got from that paragraph? Yes.
That when you're asleep, the only sense you have is your hearing.
What is that? How, can you translate that in your own words or in your own experience?
Oh, my own yeah. Well, I was just thinking, like, we're spiritually asleep, so
Yeah.
the only thing we can do is hear. Try to. We can't see Krishna.
Yeah.
And we have the deities and stuff,
Yeah.
but
And also too, you can think of, that's why we have alarm clocks. Because when we're asleep, you can't, then there's an alarm clock. And you heard that. Oh, and you have different reactions to that noise. That's okay. But it wakes us up. So has anybody had the experience of reading some transcendental literature and not becoming immediately enlivened? Or, and what to do about that? Is it, we're reading now and we might be semi-enlivened, but what about the times when we read and it doesn't seem to hit us or affect us? Kunti, can you pass the mic over or back or forward, either way?
I was just thinking that I started reading when I was really young, or even in university, and I wasn't even interested in the reading. I was just doing it, I don't know, because it was the right thing to do. And I didn't realize until like years later that actually had really affected my consciousness, because things started changing in my life, which I wasn't really realizing was connected to that. And I was getting disinterested in things that I used to be interested in. And so like this, my consciousness was changing even though I wasn't realizing.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? That's a really good example too. That by hearing, because things are presented by the acharyas through the message of the Lord. Things are presented in such a logical way. It just cuts through the illusion that we have, even initially imperceptibly, and gradually you see that. And when we see things of so-called pleasure and this and that, then you can remember, oh yeah, there's some pleasure there. It's not that there's no pleasure in the material world. There's pleasure there, but it's also temporary and so paltry and so insignificant compared to the real taste of spiritual pleasure. Yes, Guru.
Often it means that we're not hearing in the right mood. So hearing entails submissive hearing. And often we can approach with the idea that I'm gonna master this philosophy and parse the verbs, and it's not really, we want to go and submissively hear the voice of the Lord speaking through
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, a lot could be said about that, proper hearing, and it's very important. But there's a lot that could be said about a lot of things, and we're just gonna move on to the second paragraph right now. Would you like to read the second paragraph? The ultimate result.
The ultimate result of devotional service is to develop genuine love for the Supreme Personality. Love is a word which is often used in relation with man and woman, and love is the only word that can be properly used to indicate the relation between Lord Krishna and the living entities. The living entities are mentioned as Prakriti in the Bhagavad Gita, and in Sanskrit, Prakriti is a feminine object. The Lord is always described as the Parama Purusha, or the Supreme Male Personality. Thus, the affection between the Lord and the living entities is something like that between the male and the female. Therefore, the term love of Godhead is quite appropriate.
That's our relationship with the Lord. We're subordinate to the Lord. He's dominator. And when we're in that proper position, then things go much smoother. We'll continue on. This is kind of a long purport, but we want to read the whole thing. Would someone else like to read? Go right ahead.
Giving devotional service to the Lord begins with hearing about the Lord. There is no difference between the Lord and the subject matter heard about him. The Lord is absolute in all respects, and thus there is no difference between him and the subject matter heard about him. Therefore, hearing about him means immediate contact with him by the process of vibration of the transcendental sound. And the transcendental sound is so effective that it acts at once by removing all material affections mentioned above. As mentioned before, a living entity develops a sort of complexity by material association, and the illusory engagement of the material body is accepted as an actual fact. Under such false complexity, the living beings under different categories of life become illusioned in different ways. Even in the most developed stage of human life, the same illusion prevails in the form of many isms and divides the loving relation with the Lord and thereby divides the loving relation between man and man. By hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, this false complexity of materialism is removed, and real peace in society begins, which politicians aspire for so eagerly in so many political situations.
Let's take a break here because it's a long paragraph and there are so many nice points already. So, what did you glean from what we read already? Some of the things we already mentioned, I appreciated, but anything? Anyone in that paragraph? How about that term, material complexity? What do you remember about that? Nate?
I feel like I've seen this in a few purports. Prabhupada hates the isms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to expand on that a little bit? Okay. Thanks for that honest answer. Material complexities. By the misidentification with the body, we're identifying with all the material complexities as we were mentioning, and then our problems, whatever challenges we have, we try to solve them with our own mind and our own endeavor, and we enter more and more into those material perplexities, which are what? What's the point about that's being mentioned here? They're superfluous to the real us. It's not the real us, and then extrapolating or expanding those material complexities, then we make all these isms: communism, capitalism, democratism, republicanism, whatever it is, altruism, whatever. We make all so many little categories of things that simply divide us further. Well, I'm in this camp. Well, I'm in that camp. Well, I'm over here. Well, I'm over there. Well, just makes it so much more complex. When all of it's solved very simply by hearing about Krishna and realizing our connection with each other in relation to the Lord, and allowing that diversity and individuality to flourish in relation to the Supreme Lord, and that we can all participate somehow or other in some aspect of devotional service. We were talking about the politician. Anyone else want to make a comment now? Yes, we will.
how do we balance out the statements about Krishna consciousness being a gradual process and that we should be patient with all of these things that are purported to happen instantly and at once?
Great question. Sometimes the instant benefit of that are explained here, they're there, instantly there, but they're not understood by the living entity. The whole result isn't immediately understood. Just like the word, remember the word for sprouts up at once? Do you remember? Upadhyate. So when you think of a sprout, okay, let's even take one step back. Let's think of an oak tree, because now it's oak tree acorn falling season. And it's one thing that you notice if you live in Florida for some time. In the fall, you always hear ding, ding, ding on the roofs. You know, oh, it's an acorn. So the acorn, right? Okay. So there it is. The acorn drops on the ground. The little squirrel comes by. He's already eaten so many acorns that day that he takes that acorn and he buries it in the ground because he's going to come back and get it if he remembers where he put it. And he's going to come back and get it in a month or two when there's not so many there. Because in the meantime, the little acorn's in the ground and it just happens to rain and then he just happens to sprout. Okay, so now we're at Upadhyate. So the little acorn's just starting to sprout. That acorn seed has the potentiality to be the acorn tree. That huge, oak tree, not acorn tree. The oak tree, okay? He has a potential to be these huge, gigantic acorn trees. Oak trees, sorry. He has that potentiality in the form of that hard seed. If he's in the right circumstance, if the water comes, then he'll sprout. If the water comes again, then he'll grow a little bit, and gradually he'll grow into a tree. And if he isn't in an area that's going to be torn down and built up for an apartment building, then he might grow into a tree. It's all right there. And if all the things happen, it'll grow. So similarly, it's a stretch, but it's similar. We're hearing a little bit about Krishna and we get instant relief from all material distress if we keep watering, if we keep in a nice circumstance and this and that and this and that, and we grow and we join the Krishna house, etc., whatever. But even if we don't do that right away, unlike the material seed and the sprout, if they don't get the water they need when they need it, especially in the beginning stages, they're out of the scene. But if we don't get the water we need, or we don't continue to cultivate our Krishna consciousness, even we took Krishna lunch 100,000 times when we were at UF or whatever, even if we don't do anything more than that, that potentiality is permanently there and will gradually grow. Yes, what would you like to add? Thank you.
And in the beginning, we might get tastes, higher taste from, for instance, hearing in a class. It lifts us out of our material miseries for a moment, but it doesn't, we don't become fixed in that state until later. So it's those little tastes of relief that we get from hearing and chanting or listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. But we have to, this is another way of saying what you just said, we have to continue in that process until Krishna actually gives us the grace of being permanently fixed in a state of relief.
Right. And fortunately, Krishna also gives us the guarantee that whatever endeavor that we've made, whatever little bit of start of endeavor, it's permanently there for our asset. Thank you. Yes, dear?
I wanted to give an example I feel like helps a lot for the part where you said that sometimes we're just not aware of the instant benefit that's happening. And when I first visited a temple to stay the night was at Nugaloka. And I was just kind of going about business. I stayed there for a few days. I met with a Maharaj and associated with devotees for the longest straight time I did. And I had no idea. I just felt the same in my eyes. I was just, absorbed in going through things. It wasn't until I left And I went to the airport and I tried to walk into a Starbucks that I was like, whoa. And I realized
Yeah.
how much had changed
Yeah.
in such a short time. So yeah, sometimes we just don't know.
That's nice that you even realize that, that's, and hopefully you'll always remember that, you know what I mean? Because and you'll hear stories. We had, for Prabhupada's disappearance day, this one girl, Jenny, came, and she had been into the temple years ago. Anyway, in her glorification of Srila Prabhupada, she gave a similar, sequence of events. She didn't realize how, and she also was explaining how much, because she was affected, how much that affected her mother, how much it affected her daughter, how much it affected other people that came in contact with her. So you just never know how it goes on exponentially. We better get to this other part of the report. So do you remember where we left? We have it up there. Yeah, the politicians. Great, thanks. Did someone else take a turn reading? Someone in the picture.
Politicians want a peaceful situation between man and man, and nation, but at the same time, because of too much attachment for material domination, there is illusion and fearfulness. Therefore, the politicians' peace conferences cannot bring about peace in society. It can only be done by hearing the subject matter described in the Srimad Bhagavatam about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The foolish politicians may go on holding peace and summit conferences for hundreds of years, but they will fail to achieve success. Until we reach the stage of reestablishing our lost relation with Krishna, the illusion of accepting the body as the self will prevail, and thus fearfulness will also prevail.
You want to read that again, please? That
until we reach the stage of reestablishing our lost relation with Krishna, the illusion of accepting the body as the self will prevail, and thus fearfulness will also prevail.
It's just so logical, isn't it? It might be hard to comprehend it fully, but it's so logical. And that's our problem. The problem is that we're so steeped in thinking that I'm my body, and not just for these 70 years or 20 years or whatever applies to you in the age of your body. It's for millions of lifetimes in this material world. Every single body I was in, I thought that's who I was. So I'm very conditioned to thinking I'm my body, and I'm very conditioned to thinking what makes me feel comfortable. But unless I put it together that actually I don't belong here, and I belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a servitor, then that there's no escape. There's no relief from the miseries. They're going to come in different forms and different shapes and different sizes. And the only solution is reestablishing our lost relationship with the Lord. You want to continue on?
As for the validity of Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from revealed scriptures, and there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from personal experiences of devotees in various places like Vrindavana, Navadvipa, and Puri. Even in the Kaumudi dictionary, the synonyms of Krishna are given as the son of Yashoda and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman. The conclusion is that simply by hearing the Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, one can have direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and thereby one can attain the highest perfection of life by transcending worldly miseries, illusion, and fearfulness. These are practical tests for one who has actually given a submissive hearing to the readings of Srimad Bhagavatam.
So how does that make you feel? 2 thumbs up. The conclusion is that simply by hearing the message of the Bhagavatam and the Vedic literatures, one can have direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and thereby attain the highest perfection. That's the conclusion. And we're getting it. We're only in the first canto. We're only in the 7th chapter of the first canto. And it's already been mentioned a few different times and in a few different ways that the conclusion is that connect yourself, reestablish your connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by hearing from the Bhagavatam and the Vedic literature. Okay. Comments, questions? We're just zooming on to the next one. Yes, Prabhu.
you very much. And thank you for the garland.
Hare Krishna. There are flowers that last year when I went to the Govardhan retreat, there was some marigolds growing. So I took a couple home with me, planted the seeds, and they sprouted up at once. Not really, but anyway. And now they're giving millions of marigolds.
Wow, these are from Govardhan?
They are originally, their mother was from Govardhan. They're from Alachua.
Wow.
Okay.
Was that legal?
Yes. Because it was only 2 marigold seeds. 2 marigolds. Okay.
On Chris's point, it seems like something comes in the purport that's very interesting. And if I can reiterate, it is definitely suggested herein that simply by hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's towards, right there, one gets the attachment for the Supreme Personality of God, Shri Krishna. So it seems like that comes as a requirement or prerequisite. And then as soon as that happens, the effect of, the symptoms of the material disease will disappear. So it's corresponding to that process. They say after anartha nivritti, everything happens very fast. Very fast.
Like gunpowder.
Yeah.
But
there's a prerequisite of going through that, what's it called, the dark night of the soul and purification. They say, I heard that Chinese bamboo, when it's planted, it takes 5 years to germinize and to start shooting the shoots. But every day one has to water it for 5 years, and you see nothing happening.
Yeah.
There's nothing happening. And then one day, when it starts shooting, it shoots like over 1 meter in 24 hours. Just starts growing. So hang in there, Chris. Hang in there.
I was thinking when you said the word bamboo, because we have some bamboo at the house. And then once it starts to sprout, you can never get rid of it practically. Never. No matter what you do. You have to be really, really determined. I won't go there. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's go to verse 8. We'll just go to the translation, please. I'll start reading it. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. And considering that it's 8:23, we're going to just go to the next verse. So this is what's happening. Vyasadeva does his meditation. He sees the Lord. After a certain point, he sees the Lord. He sees the external energy behind the Lord, and he sees the living entity. So he understands the relationship between all three. Then he takes that information and he tells his son Sukadeva all about it. Now comes up a question. Would someone like to read this verse, please? And thank you. Okay.
Sri Sanika asked Sutta Goswami. Sri Sukadeva Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature?
Okay, so now I want someone to tell me what he's saying here in their own words. What's happening here in this verse? How about the back row? Back row from here over. It's a quiet back row back there. Yep, now you've got the mic and everything. What's that verse saying?
He's saying Sukadeva Goswami was already self-realized, and he, didn't need anything to please him. So why did he study the scriptures? Because he didn't need to. He already knew everything.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. Thank you. In other words, Sukadeva Goswami was already Atmarama. He was already self-satisfied. He was already very advanced on the process of devotional, on process of self-realization. So why did he, Jai Shishikoni Tai? We're glad that you don't have to dash today. Why did he take up the process of studying the scriptures? Yes, Prabhu. Pass the mic back that other way. Thanks.
He was Brahman realized. But when he heard about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the personal form of the Lord and the relationship as it was given in the Bhagavatam by his father, he was greatly attracted to it.
Right.
So it's a higher level of Atmarama.
Correct. Thank you. So in other words, Sukadeva Goswami, his level of realization on the process, there's Brahman, there's Paramatma, and then Bhagavan. So he was on that level of realization where he was understanding, I'm not my body, I've got nothing to do with this material world and this and that. I'm eternal spirit. But there was no relationships. There's no, and higher than that is understanding that the Supreme Lord's in your heart and that you have a relationship with him as a servant. And higher than that is to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Person. Everyone has a relationship with him. I have a relationship with him in service. And it's eternally, ever increasingly blissful to act on that platform. So that provokes, yes, Guru?
I was just going to say in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that several times there it is mentioned that the bliss of Brahman realization is like a drop in comparison to the vast ocean of Bhagavan realization.
Good point. Yeah, thanks. That makes it much more graphically clear. It's like that drop of the bliss. There's bliss there. There's bliss there. That Ananda is there. But it's compared to the bliss of devotional service. Can you think of another verse that gives a comparison to that bliss of devotional service? Here's the hint, the ever increasing bliss of devotional service. Lord Chaitanya told us in his Shikshashtika, Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam, that the bliss of devotional service is a bliss that's ever increasing. It's ever increasing all the time. Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam, that it's can't be measured at all. So we're going to go now to verse 10. We'll try to do that in 3.5 minutes, very in depth. Okay, so this is a very famous verse. It's the Sanskrit, it's very famous. Atmaramas Chamunayo. So can we have someone read the translation, whoever chooses? Whoever grabs their mic and turns it on fastest. Thank you.
Swami said, all different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma, or the spirit, self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls.
So it's a very important point. It's a very high philosophical point that for some of us, I'll point this way, for some of us, that high philosophy is not like, you have to really apply your mind to see what's so, interesting about it. But what he's saying, what Vyasadeva is saying, that all people, no matter what stage of realization they're on, even if they're thinking that it's all one, and I'm in bliss, I'm just a little spark of that bliss, and it's all one, and everybody's like that, and they're not emphasizing relationships at all. When they hear about those transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord, and then they hear through the proper source, the proper explanation of it, they become attracted even they become attracted. So the purport is very technical. We're gonna skip down a few paragraphs. Is that okay? Lord Chaitanya, this is a famous dialogue Lord Chaitanya had in that's narrated in Chaitanya Charitamrita when he's explaining this Atmarama verse. And he explains it in 64 different ways. And it's like mind-blowing how philosophically astute and accurate and detailed it is. We're going skip down to where the paragraph starts. The word Urukrama means the one whose activities are glorious. Way down. couple of paragraphs. The word, yeah, great. Okay, please go ahead.
Word urukrama means the one whose activities are glorious.
Just 1 second. Uru and krama. Krama means step. So, a lot of times you think of Vamanadeva, he took his little, said, I just need 3 steps of land. It's just a gradual thing. I just need a little bit to lie on. But then he expanded his steps. So urukrama means one whose activities are glorious. Go ahead.
Krama means step.
Oh.
This word urukrama specifically indicates the Lord's incarnation as Vamana, who covered the whole universe by immeasurable steps. Lord Vishnu is powerful, and his activities are so glorious that he can create the spiritual world by his internal potency and the material world by his external potency. By his all-pervading features, he is everywhere present as the supreme truth, and in his personal feature, he is always present in his transcendental abode of Goloka Vrindavan, where he displays his transcendental pastimes in all variegatedness. His activities cannot be compared to anyone else's, and therefore the word urukram is just applicable to him only.
Any thoughts or comments or anything, questions about that? I'm just trying to pretend we'll make it through this report. Okay, so we'll go on. The point, okay, what's happening is that Srila Prabhupada's going through every single word and explaining the meaning. That was in the paragraphs that we skipped. He went through what all the different meanings of the words are. Now he's going through it again with a little more elaborate explanation. Can someone continue to read according to Sanskrit verbal roots? There's a lot of reading. Nitai, do you have a mic? Can you pass the microphone over and up and down?
According to Sanskrit verbal arrangement, kurvanti refers to doing things for someone else. Therefore, it means that Atmaramas render devotional service unto the Lord not for personal interest, but for pleasure of the Lord, urukrama. Hetu means causal. There are many causes for one's sense satisfaction, and they can be chiefly classified as material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation, which are generally desired by progressive persons.
Okay, one little interruption here. It's just such a scientific process, right? They're like, we're just going along in our lives and we think happiness, right? You just think of happiness, right? Here it is, but a defined happiness. There's spiritual happiness, there's material happiness, there's in such a way that who would ever have thought that? It's already all, and they have all the little categories. So what were the classifications of
Sense satisfaction.
Sense satisfaction,
material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation.
Yeah, mystic powers. Prabhupada says in Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada says one can get a lot of pleasure from one after one performs the austerities and acquires mystic powers. But he said, but it's only material. Those pleasures are only material, as you can control this, you can do that. They're only material. But the real pleasure is in the spiritual pleasure of serving the Lord. Okay, you can continue, please.
As far as material enjoyments are concerned, they are innumerable, and the materialists are eager to increase them more and more because they are under the illusory energy. There is no end to the list of material enjoyments, nor can anyone in the material universe have all of them. As far as the mystic powers are concerned, there are 8 in all, such as to become the manifest in form, to become weightless, to have anything one desires, to lord it over the material nature, to control other living beings, to throw earthly globes in outer space, etc. These mystic powers are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. The forms of liberation are 5 in number.
So let's just go back up a little bit to where it says, as far as material enjoyments are concerned, they are innumerable. So there are such varieties of enjoyments, and they all give some amount of pleasure. Usually, it's a small amount of pleasure. But because there's some pleasure in the end or in the middle or in the beginning of some material engagement, therefore one thinks that if I just could arrange it, can I just arrange the thing so the pleasure will last longer? Or should I change that pleasure so I get a different pleasure? So therefore, we're always, again, our mind is always entrapped in this very paltry, very insignificant amount of pleasure that it brings and forgetting the huge endeavor of work it took to get to that point. It's amazing. And that little bit of pleasure, because it's there, you think, okay, it's all right. Let's do it. Yeah. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, let's go on then. Unalloyed devotion means that someone else needs to read. How about in the back row?
Unalloyed devotional service of the Lord progresses in different stages. Practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81
Hold on a
different
second.
qualities.
Can you read look up on the screen, it's a little different.
Oh, sorry.
Therefore, unalloyed devotion
Therefore,
means
unalloyed
service.
devotion
Okay,
means
there you go.
service to the Lord.
Oh yeah, one paragraph.
Without desire for the above mentioned personal benefits. And the powerful personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, can be fully satisfied by such unalloyed devotees, free from all sorts of desires for personal benefit.
So what happens if you have desires? Does that mean you have to wait till you don't have any material desires before you worship the Lord? Oh, what does he say? What does Lord Chaitanya say, Gopal? So Lord Chaitanya says, I'll just repeat it for the kitchen devotees who are working very hard. So Lord Chaitanya says, don't think that you have to wait to become perfect before engaging in devotional service. Or immediately. Because, and can you think of some examples that we already have had that you might be familiar with from the Bhagavatam? Yes, dear.
Example is not from Bhagavatam.
Narada, did you say?
It's not from Bhagavatam.
Oh, it's not from Bhagavatam. That's okay. I'll tell you if we accept it or not.
Okay, so an example is perhaps if you're in a materially unstable position, but you need to, you received an instruction to work to get money for the temple or a project, something in service of Krishna, then we can we're not perfect, we still have a desire for personal benefit, but we can kind of dovetail that by giving half of what we earned, following Rupa Goswami's example, or maybe having two separate sources of income. One is for personal needs and one is just for
Okay,
service.
thank you. Okay, we accept that. Okay, I was thinking of if someone can give an example from the Bhagavatam of a person who wasn't perfect but engaged in devotional service, or who wasn't free from material motivations, and we need to pass the mic over to the opposite corner. Thank you.
Dhruva Maharaj.
That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, young boy, motivated by, having his ego jarred by his stepmother, the cruel words of his stepmother, and totally motivated by revenge, more or less. I'll show them what I can do. I'll get a kingdom bigger than not only bigger than my father, but bigger than my grandfather that just happens to be Lord Brahma. So it makes it quite a large kingdom that he wanted to acquire. And by engaging wholeheartedly, after he met Narada Muni, engaging wholeheartedly in the process, chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, he became totally cleansed. And as a result, he came to the realization on his own. Nobody told him, you're just asking for like broken pieces of glass. No, he came to that own conclusion on himself. I see what I've been given by this darshan of Krishna Garbha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being touched on the head with his personal conch shell. I've seen that what I've been given is a diamond. What I wanted was just like grains of sand, grains of glass, nothing. Yeah. Right. Okay. When do you want me to stop? A few more minutes. Okay. Let's read unalloyed devotional service. How about Tulsi? Tulsi, can you read? Is that all right? You're not that shy, are you? You'll read, right? Thank you.
Unalloyed devotional service of the Lord progresses in different stages. Practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities, and above such activities is the transcendental practice of devotional service, which is one and is called sadhana bhakti. When unalloyed practice of sadhana bhakti is matured into transcendental love for the Lord, the transcendental loving service of the Lord begins gradually developing into 9 progressive stages of loving service under the headings of attachment, love, affection, feelings, affinity, adherence, following, ecstasy, and intense feelings of separation.
Can somebody help us digest this paragraph? What are the I'm not familiar. I didn't read this far down in the purport. The 81 different qualities. Practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities. You have any thoughts on that before you go out of the room? Prabhu? You get the microphone right there. I'm sorry.
The 81 different.
Here's the second sentence in the paragraph. Practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities. And above such activities is a transcendental practice of devotional service.
I don't think I know the answer to that one.
Neither do I. I think that's going to be our homework. Okay. Yes. You can enlighten us. Thank you.
Well, this is just a guess. Is it the combination of the modes of nature
Yes.
being mixed with devotional service?
Yes, it is. But it's just, to me, it's very striking that Prabhupada says 81. So you must have a reference in mind, which is escaping me at this particular point. Shruti Shagar Prabhu.
The different kinds of devotional services. So it's like first 3 modes, then within those 3 modes, each of them have, and further mode of goodness, passion, and mercy. So it's a permutation. So it can be 81 different kinds based on that.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, but how to get to 81? But it's okay. That's the point. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. You can see Matt and I have gone separate ways a really long time ago.
Elaborate now, because I
That's okay.
Prabhu has clarified. So you have devotional service where the modes are combined in such a way, one's predominant and it's flavored by the other 2. And you switch that around 81 different ways that are 81 combinations of the 3 modes being mixed.
And then as a result of those 81 combinations, you get unlimited nuances of that combination. Okay, great. Got that one all cleared up. Thank you. You can go now. Thank you. Come back soon, though. In other words, again, just striking how scientifically presented this philosophy is. Okay, and I'm just gonna, let's go down to, going down to the last 2 paragraphs of the purport, and I'll just read it. By his personal, his with the capital H, by his personal features and transcendental attributes, the Lord attracts all psychological activities of a pure devotee. Such is the attractive power of Lord Krishna. The attraction is so powerful that a pure devotee never hankers for any one of the 4 principles of religion. What are the 4 principles? Kama, Artha, Moksha, and Dharma. Yeah. Desire for sense gratification, a materialistic endeavor to do it. What did you say? Artha, the endeavors. Kama, Artha, Dharma. Religious, following the religious scriptures so that you can get what you want in a religious way. And moksha, desiring liberation for your personal benefit so that you'll be happier. Those are the 4 principles of religion. These are the attractive features of the transcendental attributes of the Lord. And adding this to the word api and cha, one can increase the imports unlimitedly. According to Sanskrit grammar, there are 7 synonyms. So by interpreting each and every word of this sloka, one can see unlimited numbers of transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna that attract the mind of a pure devotee. And that reminds me from this, and I've mentioned this before, but in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, in the story of Prahlad and Nrsinga and Lord killing Hiranyakashipu, right at the point when Lord Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu, in the purport at that point, the Lord kills Hiranyakashipu, and then he sits down on Hiranyakashipu's throne in a victorious mood. And in the purport there, Srila Prabhupada talks about how the Lord, this very last paragraph, how the Lord has unlimited qualities. He has unlimited qualities because there are unlimited numbers of living entities. And every living entity is attracted to the Lord in a unique way. And therefore, the Lord has a quality that every one of us are attracted to on our own that's more prominent than another quality. So interesting, isn't it? It's so complete. The picture is so complete that the Lord's providing ways and means for all living entities who have variegated interests to become interested and satisfied in his service. And all of that starts with remembering to hear about his characteristics and qualities and pastimes. And that's what was the gist of this section, that by hearing about the activities and qualities and pastimes of the Lord, we become free from our attachment and attraction to the material world, become attracted to his service, and ultimately taking it to the full perfection of hearing, can go beyond this illusion, along this misery that is superfluous to the living entity, even though it appears very real. Even though these buildings and this endeavor and this, things seem very real and important, they're insignificant and temporary. Hare Krishna. Yes, please.
In case it wasn't clear, I found the 81.
That's good. Make it more clear.
It's from what Shruti Prabhu said from Kapila Dev's teachings. It says there's 9 different processes of devotional service, so that when and each of them can be divided into the 3 qualitative categories. So that's 9 times 3, 27. And when that also is multiplied by another 3, becomes 81.
Thank you. We got it down. There's lots of ways to be elusive.
There's nuances in each category.
Yes.
Category.
That's
because combining. You
yeah.
Can get more.
Yeah. We have our own individual, unique attraction to the material energy that can be dissolved by. How are we going to dissolve it?
Submissive hearing.
Oh, thanks. Submissive hearing, oral reception, constant. Thank you very kindly for your attention, and